The house was quiet when I got home, which was unusual. Carolyn wasn't exactly the sit in silence and reflect type. She was more of a blast music while scrolling through her phone and complaining about something minor kind of woman. But today, the air felt different. At first, I thought maybe she had gone out. Maybe she was at yoga or wine night with the neighborhood book club, where no books were ever read, but plenty of Chardonnay mysteriously disappeared. But then I saw her purse on the counter, her keys next to it. So she was home. That's when I heard it. A soft sound coming from upstairs, like a drawer sliding shut. Now, a normal husband might have called out, "Honey, you home?" and waited for a response. But not me. No, my mind immediately jumped to the most dramatic possible conclusion. Maybe she had finally snapped after years of my terrible jokes and was upstairs packing a bag. Or maybe, just maybe, there was an armed burglar in our bedroom, carefully selecting which of my work shirts he wanted to steal before realizing they were all slightly wrinkled and of questionable fashion choices. There was only one way to find out. I walked up the stairs, taking my time, as if moving slowly would somehow prepare me for whatever nonsense I was about to step into. When I reached our bedroom, the door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and there she was. Carolyn stood in front of the dresser, quickly shoving something into the back of the top drawer. Her head snapped toward me, her expression doing that thing people's faces do when they've been caught doing something they definitely shouldn't be doing. "Oh," she said, her voice a little too light, too casual. "You're home early." I wasn't, by the way. She just wasn't expecting me to be on time for once. "What are you doing?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Nothing," she said too quickly. Now, if I had been a smarter man, I would have played it cool. I would have nodded, walked out of the room, and waited for an opportunity to investigate whatever she was so desperate to hide. But no, that would have required patience and basic intelligence, neither of which I had in that moment. Instead, I walked right over to the dresser and pulled open the drawer. "Patrick," Carolyn started, reaching out like she was about to stop me, but it was too late. There, hidden beneath a stack of mismatched socks and an old birthday card from her aunt, was a small, folded piece of paper. I pulled it out before she could grab it. "Really, Patrick, it's not." But I had already unfolded it. It was a receipt. And not just any receipt. A receipt for a very specific purchase from a very specific store. I stared at it, rereading the details just to make sure my brain wasn't misfiring. "Interesting," I said finally. Carolyn pressed her lips together. "It's not what it looks like." I raised an eyebrow. "It looks like you bought a set of men's golf clubs." She swallowed. "Okay, maybe it is what it looks like." I nodded slowly, trying to decide which angle I wanted to take. I could go the direct route. "Why are you secretly buying golf clubs? But where's the fun in that?" Instead, I said, That's weird. Because I don't golf." She let out a nervous laugh. "Well, you've always said you wanted to try new things." "True," I said. "But usually when I try new things, I like to be informed about them first. So I don't walk into the garage one day and trip over a sport I didn't know I played." Carolyn sighed. "Patrick." Wait, I said, holding up a hand. "Maybe they're a gift? Are you planning to surprise me with a spontaneous golf career?" She hesitated. A long, telling hesitation. "No," she admitted. I gave a dramatic gasp. "Then who, Carolyn? Who are these mystery clubs for?" She looked away. That's when it hit me. Not all at once, but in pieces. Like a puzzle that I hadn't realized was missing half its parts until someone came along and casually tossed them on the table. Carolyn didn't golf. I didn't golf. But someone in her life did. And suddenly, all the little things, the extra time at the gym, the sudden enthusiasm for weekend errands, the way she had started humming more, clicked into place. I turned the receipt over in my hands. "Is this for him?" I asked, my voice quieter now. She didn't answer, which was, of course, the most obvious answer of all. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "So let me get this straight. You," I waved the receipt for emphasis, "are out here buying golf clubs for some guy? What? Was he using a bad set before? Were his swings just not hitting right?" Carolyn crossed her arms. "Patrick. No. I just want to understand," I said, shaking my head. "I mean, you've never even pretended to be interested in my hobbies, but suddenly you're out here investing in his? That's commitment. That's dedication." She had the nerve to look annoyed. "It's not that simple." I let out a laugh. "Oh, I'm sure it's very complicated. Was it a pity purchase? Is he terrible at golf?" Were you trying to make sure he stopped embarrassing himself on the course? Because honestly, Carolyn, if he's the kind of guy who needs you to buy him golf clubs, that's just sad. She rubbed her temples. Can we not do this right now? Sure, I said. We can do it later. Maybe after your next trip to the sporting goods store. Silence. I stared at her, waiting. She stared back. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd try to lie. Maybe she'd tell me it was all a misunderstanding, that she was just holding onto the receipt for a friend. But she didn't, because we both knew. Carolyn had been cheating on me. And the best part? She was literally funding it. I sighed, tossing the receipt onto the dresser. Well, I said, stretching my arms. At least I can say I was a generous husband, even if I didn't know it. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't punch you in the face all at once. It sneaks in, slow and irritating, like a mosquito buzzing around your ear in the dark. At first, you swat at it, thinking you imagined it. Then, after the third or fourth time, you realize it's real, and suddenly you're wide awake, slapping at thin air, wondering how long it's been feeding off you. That's where I was, standing in my own bedroom, staring at a stupid receipt for a set of golf clubs I never knew existed, for a sport I never played, meant for a man I never met. Carolyn, my wife, stood in front of me, arms crossed, face blank, like she had mentally left the conversation 10 minutes ago. I could almost hear the imaginary elevator music playing in her head. So, I said, leaning against the dresser, waving the receipt around like it was an actual legal document. What's the next step here? Do I get to meet him? Should I be there when you hand him his fancy new clubs? Or is there a ceremonial golf baptism I should be aware of? Carolyn exhaled loudly, the universal sign of a woman who had lost patience but had no logical argument to counter. Patrick, can you just what? I cut in. Forget that you've been sneaking around, buying expensive sports equipment for some guy, while I've been sitting here wondering why my wife suddenly turned into a mysterious, secretive person who disappears for hours. She ran a hand through her hair, and I knew what was coming. Damage control. The classic let's pretend this isn't what it looks like routine. I had seen it before. Not from Carolyn, but in life. It was the same technique people used when caught lying about finishing a report at work or when they swore they didn't eat the last cookie but still had crumbs on their face. I was going to tell you, she finally said. I let out a short laugh. Oh yeah? When? Before or after the club fitting session? Maybe during the first tournament? Or were you waiting until he won the Masters so you could bring me along to the victory party? She closed her eyes for a moment, probably counting to 10 in her head to keep herself from saying something stupid. I appreciated the effort, but we were way past the point of self-restraint. You're overreacting, she said. I clapped my hands together. There it is. The classic move. I'm overreacting. I pointed at the receipt still in my hand. Of course, because nothing screams casual, innocent favor like dropping hundreds of dollars on sports gear for a man who isn't your husband. Carolyn groaned. Can you stop making a scene? Oh, I'm sorry, I said, stepping back and making a grand gesture. Would you prefer I sit down and take notes? Maybe interview you like a true crime documentary? So, Mrs. Carter, when did you first realize your husband was a complete moron? She crossed her arms tighter, which only meant one thing. She had nothing left to say that wouldn't immediately make her look worse. Good. I had spent months, maybe even a year, feeling like I was slowly losing my wife without knowing why. I blamed stress. I blamed work. I blamed myself for not being exciting enough, for getting too comfortable in our routine. But standing here, watching her squirm under my questions, it was suddenly very clear. It had nothing to do with me. Carolyn just sucked. So what now? I asked, dropping the receipt onto the dresser like it was a piece of evidence at a crime scene. Do we play the misunderstanding card? Or do I get the full confession? Let's get creative. Maybe you won them in a mystical raffle that only applies to other men. She rolled her eyes, which was bold considering she was the one in the hot seat. If you're not going to be serious, then... I cut her off again. Oh, I'm very serious, Carolyn. Serious enough to ask you again, who is this guy? Silence. That was all the answer I needed. I smiled, nodding to myself. Right. Of course. I mean, why would I need to know? I'm just the husband. The guy footing the mortgage while you play Secret Santa for some dude who probably wears polos unironically. Carolyn's jaw tightened. I could tell she wanted to lash out, flip this back on me somehow, but there was nowhere for her to go. Every road led back to her spending our money on a man who wasn't me. Then, in a last-ditch effort, she threw a classic Hail Mary. "You never ask about my life," she blurted out. I blinked. "Oh, I'm sorry, what? You never ask about what I do, who I see," she continued, gaining confidence. "You just assume I'm always around, always available to fit into your schedule, but you never take an interest in me." My mouth fell open slightly. "So let me get this straight," I said. "Your defense for secretly buying another man golf clubs is that I don't ask about your life?" She nodded, standing taller now, like she had just uncovered the golden ticket of arguments. I let out a slow whistle. "That's impressive, Carolyn. Really. I mean, most people would have gone with we grew apart. Or maybe I felt lonely, but nope. You're going with this is technically my fault for not interrogating you enough." Bold move. She crossed her arms again. "You're twisting my words." "No, I'm repeating them back to you with slightly more accuracy." For a long moment, we just stared at each other, the weight of the conversation settling between us. I could see her calculating her next step, trying to figure out if she should double down or cut her losses. In the end, she sighed. "This is exhausting." I grinned. "Oh, I'm sorry. Is my betrayal causing you fatigue?" "Patrick." No, by all means," I said, stepping back and gesturing toward the door. "Go take a nap. Rest up. I wouldn't want my wife to be too tired while sneaking off to shop for her boyfriend's sporting needs." She groaned again and stormed out of the bedroom, leaving me standing there, still holding the receipt, shaking my head. I wasn't even mad. Not in the explosive, throw a chair through the window way. No, this was worse. I was just done. And that was the part she should have been worried about. I was still standing in the bedroom, staring at the receipt, when I heard the front door open. Not slam, just open. Carolyn wasn't the dramatic type. She wasn't the kind of person who threw things, screamed, or stormed out of the house in a fit of rage. That would require passion. Carolyn's version of an exit was quiet, controlled, like she was clocking out of a shift she hated but needed to pay the bills. Good. Let her leave. I turned the receipt over, half expecting it to give me more information, like it might suddenly burst into a full confession. "Dear Patrick, you've been a fantastic husband, but I've been secretly sponsoring another man's golf career." No such luck. Just numbers, an itemized list, and an address for a sporting goods store I had never set foot in. I wasn't stupid. I could connect the dots. But knowing something and confirming something were two different things. And if there was one thing I hated more than being lied to, it was not having all the facts. So I grabbed my keys. The sporting goods store wasn't far. A 15-minute drive, assuming nobody in town suddenly forgot how stop signs worked. It was one of those places I had always ignored. One of those massive warehouse-looking stores where people with too much free time went to pretend they were professional athletes. I walked in and was immediately greeted by a guy in an employee vest who looked like he was way too enthusiastic about his minimum wage job. "Hey, welcome to Pro Sports. Anything I can help you with today?" I smiled. "Yeah. Quick question. If someone, let's say my loving wife, came in here and dropped a bunch of money on a set of golf clubs, would that purchase be tied to an account?" His customer service smile faltered. I mean, if she had a rewards membership, probably. But I can't just pull up people's purchases." I cut him off. "What if she was buying them for someone else? Like, I don't know, a guy?" His eyebrows lifted slightly. I pulled the receipt out of my pocket and handed it to him. "Look, I'm just trying to figure something out here. Can you at least tell me if this was picked up by someone other than my wife?" He hesitated. Then, after looking around to make sure his manager wasn't lurking, he glanced down at the receipt. Yeah, I remember this order." "Bingo. You do?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Yeah, it was an in-store pickup," he said, handing the receipt back to me. "Some guy came in last week and grabbed it." I nodded like that was the most normal thing in the world. "Right? And, did this guy happen to look like a husband picking up a gift? Or more like a guy who thinks my wife is his personal sponsor?" The employee shifted awkwardly. "Sir, I really don't want to get involved in. Just humor me," I said, giving him my best "come on, man, help a guy out" look. He sighed. "Look, I don't know his life story, but he didn't seem like a husband. He came in, grabbed the clubs, and left. He wasn't wearing a wedding ring, if that helps." "Oh, it helped." I nodded, patting him on the shoulder. "You've been extremely helpful. If my marriage ends because of this, I'll make sure you get a 5-star Yelp review." He laughed uncomfortably. Thanks. I walked out of the store, feeling strangely victorious. Carolyn hadn't just bought golf clubs, she had hand-delivered them to this guy. That meant planning. That meant effort. That meant this wasn't some casual, meaningless thing. It was real. And if it was real, I wanted a name. So I went to the one place where people spill secrets without realizing it. Facebook. Carolyn wasn't full, but she was predictable. Her profile was private, but her friends list wasn't. I scrolled through, looking for anyone who gave off golf club thief energy. And then I saw it. Ryan Baxter. I clicked on his profile, and there it was. Picture after picture of him on the golf course. Some alone, some with friends. And in the most recent one, posted just a few days ago, he was smiling at the camera, holding a brand new set of clubs. The same ones Carolyn bought. The caption? Big thanks to my favorite person for the best gift ever. No tag, no name. But I didn't need one. I sat back, laughing to myself. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. Ryan Baxter. I knew him. Not well, but well enough. He wasn't some random stranger. He was one of Carolyn's co-workers. And suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights at the office. The sudden interest in work events she used to complain about. The way she started dressing nicer for work, like she was trying to impress someone who wasn't me. It had been right in front of me the whole time. And now that I knew, oh, Carolyn was really going to regret underestimating me. The thing about catching your wife buying expensive gifts for another man is that it presents a unique moral dilemma. Do you confront her immediately and demand an explanation? Do you sit on the information and gather more proof like some kind of detective with a vendetta? Or do you have some fun with it? I went with option 3. Carolyn still wasn't home when I got back, which was fine. It gave me time to think. And by think, I mean plan something that would make this whole situation slightly more entertaining for me. Because at this point, that's what it was, a game. And if my wife wanted to play fool, I'd make sure she had a front row seat to her own stupidity. I grabbed my laptop and did something I had never done in our entire marriage. I logged into her work email. Now, before anyone gets all high and mighty about privacy, let me explain something. Carolyn wasn't the type to believe in strong passwords. She was the type to reuse the same one for everything. Her birthday with an exclamation mark at the end. Revolutionary. She had also, for reasons unknown, left herself logged in on our shared laptop. Maybe she thought I was too clueless to ever check. Maybe she had just gotten too comfortable. Either way, it took me all of 5 seconds to gain access to her inbox. And let me tell you, if I had any doubts before, they were gone now. Because right there, in the middle of her emails about marketing campaigns and corporate nonsense, was a thread labeled Weekend Plans. And guess who she was emailing? Ryan Baxter. I clicked. And oh, did I hit the jackpot? The emails weren't steamy. They weren't filled with professions of love or anything dramatic. No, they were worse. They were comfortable. Inside jokes. Casual mentions of things I had never heard about. Plans for their spot, whatever that meant. It wasn't the words themselves that stung. It was the normalcy of it. The way she talked to him like they had some shared history that I wasn't a part of. Like he was the person she actually wanted to talk to at the end of the day. I sat back, shaking my head. This wasn't some mistake. Some lapse in judgment. This was a full-blown second life she had built under my nose, assuming I was too oblivious to ever notice. So, I did what any rational man in my position would do. I hit reply all. And I typed, "Hey Carolyn and Ryan. Just wanted to jump in on this thread since I feel like I've been left out of all the fun. Carolyn, sweetheart, imagine my surprise when I found out that my lovely wife has been personally funding Ryan's golf addiction. I must say, it's quite touching. Ryan, my man, I have to ask, do all your side hobbies require married women to sponsor them? Or is this a new strategy? Because if so, I've got some home improvement projects I'd love to get in on. Let me know your rates. Looking forward to seeing how you both spin this. Warm regards. Patrick, the guy who pays the mortgage." I hovered over the send button for exactly 2 seconds before clicking. And then I waited. The thing about calling someone out like this is that there's no right way for them to respond. There's panic. There's scrambling. There's the frantic attempt to control the damage. And oh, did I get all of it? Because less than 10 minutes later, Carolyn was calling me. I let it ring. Then she texted, "Patrick, call me. Now." I smiled. Oh, now she wanted to talk? Now, after months of dodging, lying, and acting like I was some background character in her life? I let her sweat for a bit before finally answering. "Patrick, she said immediately, her voice sharp. What the hell was that? Oh, I don't know, Carolyn, I said, leaning back in my chair. Just a friendly email to my wife and her business associate. You had no right to. I cut her off. No right to what? Find out that my wife has been sneaking around with a guy from work? Oh, excuse me for not being more understanding. I could practically hear her grinding her teeth. It's not what you think. Oh, good, I said. Because I was thinking that you've been emotionally checked out of our marriage for months and buying expensive gifts for another man behind my back. But if it's not that, please, enlighten me. She took a deep breath, probably trying to stop herself from saying something stupid. You're making this into something it's not. Right, I said. Because innocent coworker friendships always involve surprise gifts and secret emails. Silly me. Can we talk in person? I laughed. Oh, now you want to talk? Now that you've been caught? I don't know. Carolyn, I'm pretty busy sponsoring some stranger's golf career. She exhaled sharply. I'm coming home. I hung up before she could say anything else. And then I sat there, waiting for her to walk through the door, waiting to see what kind of lie she'd try to feed me next, waiting to see just how far she'd go to pretend this wasn't happening. Carolyn didn't just walk through the door when she got home. She stormed in, like she was about to deliver the closing argument of a high-profile court case. I could already see it. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my husband is an unreasonable lunatic who has the audacity to call out my secret hobby of financing another man's hobbies. She tossed her bag onto the counter with enough force to knock over a stack of mail. What the hell is wrong with you? I smiled. Well, let's see. My wife's been secretly funding some guy's golf addiction and lying about it. So I'd say my only problem is that I didn't figure it out sooner. She groaned, rubbing her temples. Classic Carolyn move. When backed into a corner, she always went for the ugh, you're exhausting routine, as if the real crime here was my refusal to be a moron. You humiliated me, she snapped. I laughed. Oh, I humiliated you. Carolyn, I wasn't the one sneaking around like some underpaid assistant to a washed-up golf pro. I wasn't the one hiding receipts and sending secret emails like a teenager planning a house party while their parents are out of town. She exhaled sharply, folding her arms. You had no right to go through my emails. Oh, I definitely had the right, I shot back. See, it's this cool little concept called not being lied to in my own house. She shook her head. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. Didn't tell me what? I asked. That you've been playing Sugar Mama to Ryan Baxter? That you were hoping I'd be too clueless to ever notice? She hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough to confirm that every single thing I had said was true. Then she tried the next trick in her book, minimizing. It's not a big deal, Patrick. I clapped my hands together. Oh, you hear that, folks? Not a big deal. Me finding out that my wife has been treating some other guy better than me? Totally fine. Should I write you a check too? Maybe throw in a matching set of tennis rackets for you and Ryan while I'm at it. Her jaw tightened. You're being ridiculous. And you're being dishonest, I countered. Tell me something, Carolyn. If it's not a big deal, why didn't you tell me about it? Why did I have to find out like this? Silence. That was all the answer I needed. I nodded slowly. Right. Because you knew it was wrong. You knew I'd call you out. So instead of being honest, you did what you always do. You pretended it didn't matter. She rolled her eyes. I don't have to justify every purchase I make to you. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, I agree. You don't. You want to buy 50 throw pillows we don't need? Go for it. But when you're out here buying personalized sporting equipment for another guy, yeah, I'm going to have a couple of questions. She sighed, like she was the victim here. You're blowing this out of proportion. I let out a slow whistle. Amazing. Even when caught red-handed, you still can't just admit you're wrong. I have to say, Carolyn, it's almost impressive. She shifted her weight, staring at me like I was the unreasonable one, like I was making a scene for no reason. And I realized, in that moment, that she wasn't even sorry. She was just mad she got caught. That was the final nail in the coffin. I wasn't going to sit here and debate morality with someone who had the emotional awareness of a used car salesman. Carolyn had already made her choice. She just didn't expect me to figure it out. I leaned against the counter. So, here's how this is going to go. She narrowed her eyes. Excuse me. I smiled. You heard me. We're past the stage where you get to lie your way out of this. So now we move to the consequences portion of the evening. She scoffed. Oh, so now you're giving me ultimatums? No, Carolyn, I said. I'm just letting you know that I'm not stupid. And I'm definitely not sticking around to watch my wife treat another man better than she ever treated me. Her face twitched for just a second, just long enough for me to know that hit home. But she recovered quickly. You're being dramatic. And you're being unfaithful, I shot back. So, I'd say we're even. She stared at me, probably trying to decide whether to keep arguing or change tactics. I could see the gears turning in her head. If she doubled down, this whole thing would escalate. But if she played the misunderstood victim, maybe, just maybe, I'd back down. Too bad for her. I was way past backing down. I grabbed my keys. Where are you going? She demanded. I smiled. Oh, don't worry. I'm not running off to fund some random woman's hobbies. I'll leave that nonsense to you. And with that, I walked out the door, leaving her standing there, speechless for once. By the time I got back, Carolyn was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, staring at the TV like it had personally offended her. The moment she heard the door open, she turned her head slightly, just enough to acknowledge my existence, but not enough to admit she cared where I had gone. Classic move. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to see how long she could sit there, pretending she wasn't waiting for me to start the conversation. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Finally, she cracked. Where did you go? I shrugged. Oh, nowhere special. Just needed some fresh air. You know, to clear my head after finding out my wife has been treating some other guy like her personal project. She rolled her eyes. Are we seriously still on this? I let out a short laugh. Oh, I'm sorry. Was I supposed to get over it already? My mistake. I'll be sure to fast-track my emotional processing next time you betray me. She groaned, shifting on the couch. Patrick, you're acting like I had some kind of elaborate affair. It wasn't like that. I nodded. Right? Because technically, you never tripped and landed in his bed. So I should just be grateful, huh? She let out a frustrated sigh. You're twisting this. No, Carolyn, I'm untwisting it, I said. You want me to believe this was innocent. But here's the problem. You didn't act innocent. You hid it. You got defensive. And instead of apologizing, you acted like I was the problem for noticing. She didn't respond to that. Probably because there was nothing to say. I sat down in the chair across from her, tapping my fingers on the armrest. So, let's just get it out in the open. How long has this been going on? She hesitated. That told me everything. I nodded. Got it. Long enough for you to know the exact number, but not want to say it out loud. She exhaled slowly, her gaze dropping to the floor. A few months. I tilted my head. And by a few months, do you mean since last year? Her silence was deafening. I leaned back, letting the weight of it all settle. Wow. And here I was thinking I was just imagining things. Guess I should have trusted my gut sooner. She looked up, eyes flashing with something between guilt and irritation. What do you want me to say, Patrick? Oh, I don't know, I said, waving a hand. Maybe something in the realm of I screwed up and I'm sorry instead of ugh. Why are you making this a big deal? She shook her head. I wasn't looking for anything, okay? It just happened. I laughed. Right? Because fully planned out lies and secret purchases just happen. Like a sudden rainstorm. Oops. Accidentally funneled money into my coworker's hobby. Guess I'd better roll with it. She groaned, rubbing her forehead. I can't talk to you when you're like this. Like what? Aware. She stood up, crossing her arms. I didn't do anything wrong. That was it. That was the moment I officially clocked out. I nodded to myself, standing up as well. Got it. You didn't do anything wrong. Well, that clears everything up. Let's go ahead and pretend none of this happened. Her jaw tightened. Patrick. No, really, I said, grabbing my phone. You're totally right. Nothing happened. You're a saint. In fact, I think I'll take a page out of your book and start not doing anything wrong too. She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? I smiled. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'll start showering some random woman with gifts. Spending my free time on her. Giving her more attention than I ever gave you. But hey, no worries, because technically, I won't be doing anything wrong, right? Her face twitched. That's not fair. Oh, so now fairness is a thing? I chuckled, shaking my head. Carolyn, listen to yourself. You got caught treating another man better than your own husband, and instead of apologizing, you're standing here trying to convince me it doesn't count. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I nodded. Yeah, exactly. The thing is, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just done. Done with the excuses. Done with the mental gymnastics. Done with being married to someone who could lie straight to my face and still think she was in the right. I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck. Look, I could sit here all night waiting for you to admit what we both know. But honestly, I don't care anymore. Her expression faltered. Patrick, I held up a hand. Nah, don't bother. You already made your choice. She swallowed. And what's your choice? I grabbed my keys again, but this time for real. Oh, I think you already know. She stood there, watching me like she was waiting for me to change my mind. But she should have known better. I don't stay where I'm not wanted. And Carolyn, she had made it very clear, whether she realized it or not, that she hadn't wanted me for a long time. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel